Welcome back to the Giddy Carousel of Pop, the podcast that takes an old issue of the swingerilliant pop mag smash hits, usually from the 80s, although we may slide a year or two either side of that, and has a good nose through its pages with a guest. Now, we've been away for a little while the carousel has undergone essential repairs and maintenance. Every moving part has been cleaned and lubricated, and a fresh coat of paint has been carefully and lovingly applied. So all we need to do now is hop on board for a top pop ride. I'm Simon Galloway, and scream if you want to go faster, it's Gavin Hogg.
Hey, Bello, Si. I've just put down my can of WD-40 and I'm ready to rock.
Yeah, well, these are the tools of the trade.
Absolutely, my friend, absolutely.
So before we introduce our guest and get stuck into the edition of Smash Hits that we're going to be looking at in this episode, a little bit of housekeeping, because we've got a few thank yous to say to folks who've bought us a coffee.
Indeed, the following people have very kindly, very generously supplied us with a little caffeine fix while we've been working on the carousel. So step forward, take a bow or a curtsy. The following people. We've got Steve Fenton, Ricardo Waterbarn, Joe DB, Rachel Gallatley, and Phonic Underground bought us a coffee just 4 days ago. So thank you, Phonic.
Thanks to all of you. Greatly appreciated. And if you want to support us, you too can do the same. It's very simple, and it can be just a one-off thing, or you can buy us as many coffees as you like, as often as you like. It's up to you. Just go to coffee.com/giddypoppod. That's ko-fi.com. GiddyPop/GiddyPopPod. Can't forget the slash. And chuck us a few quid to help us keep the carousel spinning. Right, let's get down to business and welcome our guest onto the carousel. Hopping on for the ride of a lifetime. It's TV production designer, pop culture sponge, and pop music enthusiast Richard Drew. Welcome aboard.
Hi, how are you? Right.
Very good. It's very nice of you to join us.
Yeah, I was. I think that carousel needs a redesign, actually. So I'm the right person to do that. So yeah.
Should have got you on board sooner.
Yeah.
So mentioned there that you're a TV production designer. I've been doing some light internet stalking and just looking at some of the things that you've worked on. So, many things over quite a lengthy career now, I think.
Yeah.
But highlights that I've picked out, recently Afterlife, this time with Alan Partridge, Intelligence, and I know one of Gav's favourites, Stath Lets Flats. But also going back to the halcyon days of Grange Hill and Top of the Pops.
Ah, yes, yeah.
But for the uninitiated, what does a production designer do?
Well, it kind of it encompasses everything and anything that you see on screen. So in something like Afterlife, Tony's house, that's a set. So all the furniture has been chosen by me and, a set decorator, and the size of the room is determined by me, and the colours and the floor and the curtains, every visual aspect of what you see on screen, a production designer has had some responsibility for. And I think, that's essentially it. And then obviously on location, it's sort of choosing locations and deciding which way you want to shoot, covering up graphics on buildings, changing the names of buildings if you need to, involved in action vehicles, involved in the stunts, involved in guns, involved in anything and everything that's connected with the visual side of the show as it goes out.
And it's good pop kid credentials there that you've worked on Top of the Pops. When about was that?
I did two. So it was the year I did Grange Hill. So who was on it? It was Chesney Hawkes. James were on it doing Sit Down. Erasure were on it. OMD were on it. Two Unlimited. Because BBC had moved it up to Elstree Studios. And I was doing my year on Grange Hill, a full term, as you were. And then we used to sort of bunk off during lunchtime and go and watch bands rehearse Top of the Pops, because they, so I saw all kinds of bands, and I ended up on stage with Paul McCartney at one point during a lunch hour, as you do. And then, at the end of the year, I did it was the last one of the year, and then the Christmas special.
How old were you when you were doing that? Because if you don't mind me saying, Richard, you look You look like a fairly young chap. I can't believe you're doing that at the age of 7.
Yeah, God bless you. Well, I'm 50. I'll be 54 in a couple of weeks. So
Oh, okay.
I was sort of 21 when I started in '88. So 29, 21, early 20, mid 20s, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that still seems fairly young to be doing, because I guess you're working, if you're on a big show like Top of the Pops, you're working with people that have been in the business a long time and are well established and, you know, will have certain views on the way to do things properly and not. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a bit of a baptism of fire, I guess, at that age.
Well, it is, and I was only an art director at that point, so I wasn't sort of, you know, what we used to do is a band would come on, and sometimes a band requirement would be little more than just putting some black drape around a set of decks or whatever it is.
Bit of dry ice. Just give us a bit of dry ice.
Some more dry ice. I remember sticking icicles on the Top of the Pops logo for the Christmas show, but then, you know, some bands would require, you know, a piece of staging that was particular to them, and you'd get involved in organising that. James had been on, I did Going Live, and it was all that sort of James, all the Manchester things. So we had Soho, James, we had EMF come on, and I was doing stuff for all of those bands. So EMF, we cut out, made some big polystyrene letters for the back of the set, and then James, we did a logo that was a sort of a 2-dimensional cutout thing that they ended up taking back up to Manchester for them to go in their offices, and gave me a couple of free T-shirts, which I was very grateful for at the time. And as you said, being a pop kid, it was kind of, you know, it was brilliant. I remember spending 10 minutes chatting to Andy McCluskey about, because Sailing on the Seven Seas, that was the song they were doing, and I remember talking to him about them supporting Simple Minds, because I'd seen that in the summer. And I basically told him how shit Simple Minds were and how brilliant they were. And then Erasure, I was a big Erasure fan, and they signed a couple of singles for me and stuff like that. So yeah, it was good times.
You were living the dream, weren't you?
I was living the pop dream. And I've continued to do it because I think you guys know I did the Jonathan Ross show for a number of years on the BBC, and as designer. And I mean, honestly, the great and the good came onto that show, and just being up close with, you know, people like Stevie Wonder and Barbra Streisand and Grace Jones and Duran and Spandau and Bowie, you know, and just to be, you know, literally breathing the same air is, yeah, there's 95% of you trying to be professional, and 5% is just like a little kid, you know, just can't believe your bloody luck.
So, Richard, you picked out the edition of Smash Hits that we're going to be looking at. It's February the 17th to March the 2nd, 1983. There's a flag-waving OMD gracing the cover. Oh, they've already had a little mention already. And if you, dear listener, want to read along with us, you can do just that thanks to the Like Punk Never Happened and Smash Hits Remembered websites. You'll find links to the scans of this issue in the show notes for this episode, along with Spotify and YouTube playlists that include pretty much all the songs and artists featured in this issue of The Hits. You'll also find these links on our website, giddypoppod.home.blog, and we'll post them on our Twitter and Facebook feeds as well. Just search for the Giddy Carousel of Pop or at GiddyPopPod. So before we clamber aboard the carousel, let's set the scene. Richard, let's go back to February 1983. What were you up to? How old were you? What were you doing?
Well, it's just this issue ends the day before my 16th birthday, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. So I was 15. I was in the old, what I call fifth year. I've got 2 teenage sons, and I can't work out whether it's year 10 or 9. I've never been able to work that out. So
it's year 11, I think. But yeah.
I'm in the last fifth year of school. And then I finished doing, because I was a bit of I was sort of an amateur actor, and that's one of the reasons why I kind of ended up doing what I do for a living. So we just finished doing Blithe Spirit the Christmas before, where I played Dr. Bradman, and I wowed the audiences of Raynham in Essex with my performance. So the beginning of 83, I guess it was leading up to my exams. That was my O-levels and CSEs, and sort of knuckling down, but also rehearsing for another play that I was doing in the summer. So I was sort of, you know, juggling, rehearsing for O-level government and politics, and doing Oh What a Lovely War on stage at the local theatre. So, yeah, it was a bit of a...
winning combination, though.
Winning combination. I have found my old school report, actually, which obviously for the purposes of the podcast, nobody can see this, but basically I was an easily distracted kid, if you go through it. I mean, pretty much to a man and woman, everybody says the same. Particular attention to my technical drawing teacher, who basically said I was no good to sit the O-level and I should only sit the CSE. And ironic, given what I do for a living, that I spend quite a lot of time at a drawing board. So, damn you, Mr. Taylor. So, yeah, that's what I was up to. And obviously, when I was doing drama classes at the Guildhall in the Barbican, so I used to go up there on a Saturday morning on my own on the train, which, you know, maybe isn't such a novel thing, but it felt like, you know, quite an adventure for a sort of... Well, I started going up there when I was 14 into that there London on my own on the tube and doing these drama classes on a Saturday morning, and then stopping off at Virgin Megastore in Tottenham Court Road on the way home and all that sort of stuff. So my rude awakening of going into London and going to the Megastore. I do remember going down into the basement. They had a cafe and it was all kind of pine, very unrock and roll pine. It looked like a Spudulike, you know, it had a sort of vibe of, as a reference for the kids. They had a big painting. I remember going in, there was a massive painting of the Penthouse and Pavement album sleeve that they obviously changed whenever there was a new Virgin, because they were a Virgin band, I think, Heaven 17. So that was me, really. And sort of Breakfast TV and the Young Ones and all of that, you know.
Yeah, so what sort of stuff were you buying? What sort of stuff were you listening to?
I knew you were going to ask me that, which is why I've written it down. So I was really into kind of Thomas Dolby, Human League, Japan, Ultravox, Associates, a band called Fashion, who were from Birmingham, John Fox, Fiat Lux, Depeche Mode, who were kind of local, kind of Essex heroes, really. Culture Club. I mean, oddly, that Culture Club performance, September of the previous year, I know everybody says about that and nobody knew whether he was a boy or a girl. And I remember specifically being in art and having that very conversation with people about, you know, who was he? What did we just see on Top of the Pops last night? Who else was I? Oh, New Order I was just beginning to discover. I'd sort of heard Temptation and just thought, what the hell is this? This is amazing. And Soft Cell I was into, and what else did I write down? Oh, and hearing Pornography by The Cure for the first time. I remember hearing that at that age and just thinking, wow, this is amazing. So yeah, mainly synth-based, I think it's fair to say. I think other stuff had... You know, I knew about, ABBA and a bit of disco and all the rest of it, and ELO, you know, as a kid. But yeah, by this point, I am hook, line and sinker in love with all things electronic.
And Gav, what about you? What were you up to in February '83?
I guess really I was kind of between bands in terms of pop music stuff, because Adam and the Ants had gone their separate ways. We'll come across Merrick and Tibbs later on in here. And I was a big Adam and the Ants fan, so I was kind of upset about that and not particularly enamoured with Adam's solo direction. And it was really just before the Smiths hit, so I think I was a pop kid of no fixed abode at that time. The tunes from this issue that I did go out and buy Boxer Beat by the JoBoxers, which I still love to this day. And the album that I went and bought around this time was Battle Hymns for Children Singing by Haysi Fantayzee. So that gives you an idea of a kid who doesn't really know quite where he's at, but loving the pop sounds that are all around. And not that long before this issue came out, I'd actually gone and bought the first ever albums, because up until then I'd always just bought singles, and I'd started buying singles from about the age of 7 or 8. But February 83 will see me just before my 13th birthday, and in December of 82 I went out, and on the same day I bought the Jams' Dig the New Breed, the live album that kind of came out just after they'd split up, or kind of as they were splitting up, and the John Lennon collection, because obviously it'd been a couple of years since John Lennon had died, and I'd not known who the Beatles were when he died, you know. I'd not been kind of brought up into that. But then I'd bought some cheap Beatles cassettes not long afterwards because they were on the news a lot, weren't they? And then I started finding out about John Lennon and Paul McCartney, so I bought the John Lennon collection. So, yeah, I was just starting to slowly discover albums, and then obviously it's not long after this when the Smiths kind of grabbed me from the first time I saw them on Top of the Pops, and I started buying their albums and then, getting other things, more kind of, I suppose, more kind of inky bands rather than Smash Hits bands, because I always saw Smash Hits as more of a magazine for the singles, and then the weeklies were more about the albums for me. In terms of other stuff that I was doing, do you know what? It's really hard to think, exactly what I was up to. I mean, I know you were talking, Richard, about looking at school reports, and I think mine said very similar things. I was a bit of a dreamer and sort of academically did okay, but there was always could do much better if he concentrates on what he does. I never really had that ethic. I wasn't a naughty kid, but I just couldn't really be arsed with trying too hard. So yeah, that's about all I can remember. What about you, Si? What was going on in Galloway land in '83?
Well, I remember this period, in fact, the exact period that this edition of Smash Hits came out, I remember very well. I was nine and a half, and at the end of this week, so it was just before half-term school holidays, it was my last week in the school that I'd been going to since nursery reception, so for, almost 6 years. And we moved house from one side of Sheffield to the other. So this period for me, it's all about newness and new things. And we moved from like an old Victorian house to a house that was just a couple of years old, and it was like being in the countryside, because it hadn't really, there weren't that many other houses around there, and started at a new school just after half term. I remember the first day being taken there by my mom, and they must have looked round or something. I don't know how they arranged or sorted all that out. I didn't know where I was going or anything. Just dropped off at school one morning, taken to the classroom by one of the teachers, sat down at this table and opposite another kid, and we were introduced to each other. And the other kid was called Leah, and I'd never heard of the name Leah before. So I'm looking at Leah, thinking, is this a boy or is this a girl? I'm not quite sure here. And this kid's looking back at me, and then says, "Are you a boy or a girl?" And I'm a boy. What are you? So both are thinking exactly the same about each other. In terms of music, I was just like a little pop sponge, I guess. Radio on all the time. My mum always had the local commercial radio station on. Always listened to the top 40 on a Sunday. And this was a period where I would tape a lot of things off the radio as well on a Sunday afternoon. My dad's Dixon's Ghetto Blaster and a cassette rammed in there, and just recording the songs that I wanted. And this was probably like the first year that I was buying more records that were in the charts. And also, opposite the new school was a newsagent where I'd go and have a look at the Smash Hits in there, but I wouldn't buy it. I was a lapsed reader at this point. My sister used to have it, and then she stopped having it, and I didn't start getting it on, having it saved for me every fortnight until the following year. So I'd just kind of have a little look through, but always buy a couple of singles off the ex-jukebox rack that was in there. I don't remember buying anything at this time, but I certainly had a few of the records that were in this issue on ex-jukebox. Icehouse, Hey Little Girl, definitely had that. But then not long after that, Duran Duran came along with Is There Something I Should Know? Nick Haywood's first solo single. Just before this, I think at the end of '82, Malcolm McLaren, Buffalo Gals came out, which absolutely blew my mind. That was one that I got my mom to get me on a Friday trip to town to go to the fish market. I said, buy me this while you're down there. So yeah, I remember as well at my old school just before we left, and I think they may have done this just because I was leaving, we were doing country dancing and square dancing.
Music and Movement, we called it at school. Music and Movement,
yeah. That's what if you know the B-side of Buffalo Gals by Malcolm McLaren, It's the hoedown square dance version of Buffalo Girls, and I took this in, and we played it on the little record player that we had in the hall for when we were doing PE, and we all did a do-si do's and all that sort of thing to Buffalo Girls by Malcolm McLaren.
Excellent. It's funny you saying about getting your mum to go in to buy your record, because you clearly don't know my dad, but I got my dad to go in and buy the Culture Club Kissing to Be Clever album from Downtown Records in Romford, and I think he was visibly stunned when he got back, shaking like a leaf, because Downtown Records was an amazing record shop. Anybody who grew up in Essex, Romford and around that area will know it very well, and of a certain age. But they kind of had every person in there was almost like central casting. There was a goth behind the counter, there was a punk, there was a skinhead, there was a hippie, and it was just the most amazing record shop. If I could travel back in time, that's where I'd go. It was just one of those places that I will never ever forget as long as I live. But yeah, sending my dad in to buy the Culture Club album was definitely a highlight. But that felt like a real luxury, to come home and there'd be a new record on the bed for, you know what I mean? It just felt, it was like kind of like the ultimate in mail order, I guess.
Yeah, it's like, here's that record you wanted.
Yeah.
Still in the carrier bag.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
And where does Smash Hits fit into all this for you, Rich?
Well, this is the first issue I bought, and that's why I chose it. And I kind of, and oddly, I don't know whether at 15 I'm too late for buying it, actually. I sort of wondered whether I might be. But I looked at the previous issue, and of course it's Kajagoogoo on the cover, so I may have considered buying it, and then thought, no, I'm definitely not buying anything with Kajagoogoo. And then the OMD cover definitely drew me in, I would say, because I'd bought Architectural Morality, which is one of the greatest albums of all time, and definitely a top 5 of the 1980s. It's just a stunning piece of work. And so they were on my radar, and so I think probably seeing this cover, that was enough for me, because it looked quite cool. And I looked it up. I'm sure you guys have. It's a Sheila Rock photograph on the cover, so it's quite a cool image. And that's what reeled me into the first one I bought.
So, Gav, do you want to take us through that front cover, and also we'll have a delve into the contents page as well while we're at it?
So, yeah, talking about the cover. So then we've got OMD as a 4-piece, not a 2-piece, in very nicely pressed shirts and ties, and I mean immaculately polished shoes. You've got to say, you can see your reflection in them, can't you? They're amazing.
Very respectable. Very
respectable young lads. They seem to be standing in a giant wet room, and we think we've identified the correct location where the wet room is. More of that later, fact fans. But I think I know exactly where they are. Standing with flags, which they use in the interview inside to do some semaphore along the side of the page. It's a Japanese flag on the right. I don't know what the one on... Do you know what the one on the left was? The blue with the... Looks like a white circle, maybe. I don't know.
Well, are they... aren't they naval? Because it's battleships, so they're pennants to spell out letters, aren't they? So each flag is a different letter, I think.
Yeah, well, I tried to work out what the semaphore was later on. We'll get to that when we do the interview, but I think I've uncovered some special code. Also on the front, we've got a little tease about an article that's in the magazine about personal hi-fi and stereos, and they tempt us in with lyrics on the front cover by Icehouse and Rocker's Revenge. I can't help thinking that they've put the bar a bit low there. They could have aimed a bit higher with trying to draw the pop kids in. I'm not sure. I mean, I know, Si, you like that Icehouse single, but...
Very much so, but reasons we'll get to later.
Well, yeah, I know what those reasons are without you even having a conversation with you. Also advertised on the front, China Crisis, Spandau Ballet and Thompson Twins, who at that time were very much a new band. Over onto the first page inside, we've got Musical Youth with Never Gonna Give You Up, the lyrics to that on a full page. And then we come to the all-important song lyrics. So in this issue, apart from Musical Youth, we've also got Genetic Engineering by OMD, Love on Your Side, Thompson Twins, the aforementioned Rocker's Revenge, The Harder They Come, Level 42 with Chinese Way, which features some fantastic lyrics, which we'll come to later. There was Heartbreaker by Pat Benatar, which was a request spot that actually came out a few years before. Soweto, Malcolm McLaren, Madness, Tomorrow's Just Another Day, Toto, Bloody Africa. No, just Africa. Not Bloody Africa.
Yeah, Bloody Toto.
Bloody Toto. Yeah. Bloody Toto. Tunnel of Love, Fun Boy 3, Nature Boy, Central Line, UB40's I've Got Mine, and, as we said on the cover, Icehouse and Hey Little Girl.
I wanted the musical you thing. I know we're probably you got other things to say about it, but it just reminded me. You were talking about local radio. My mum was always on local radio doing competitions, Radio London, blah blah blah, and I remember she had to review the top 5 singles, there was new singles. It was like new releases, and one of them was Asia, a band called Asia, and I think the track was called Only Time Will Tell. But the other track I do remember her reviewing was I Passed the Dutchie by Musical Youth, and the best she could come up with, she just said, "Oh, it's a bit repetitive." That was the only thing she could say about it. But I just
she's not wrong.
Yeah, well, she isn't wrong.
She's not wrong.
But every time I see it, I just think of my mum just saying that. Yeah, it's a bit repetitive.
The Leicester Bangs of commercial radio. Talking of Musical Youth, they were kind of local lads because I grew up in Solihull, just on the outskirts of Birmingham.
Yeah.
And my nan and granddad were, for some reason, they really liked Pass the Dutchie. Obviously, they didn't find it too repetitive. They really liked it. And I remember one day my nan telling me, this must have been about this kind of time, 82, 83. They've got the train back to Shirley from town, and they said, my nan and granddad said, "Oh, we saw Musical Youth from the train window." I was like, "Oh, what were they doing?" They said, "Oh, yeah, they were just on a roundabout, just playing on the playground." I don't think it was Musical Youth. I think they'd just seen a group of young lads and just, it's Musical Youth, you know. But anyway, sorry, it just reminded me.
But looking at this, from an editorial and staff point of view on Smash Hits, David Hepworth is the editor on this one. But moving into the final month of his editorship on the magazine, and by the end of March, Mark Ellen will be taking over the reins from there, and also Neil Tennant is involved in this issue as well, and we'll encounter Neil as we go through. So let's turn that page, and we get to a section called Start, which, looking back through previous editions of Smash It, seemed to appear around about the September of 1982. And it's kind of like a photo-heavy Bitz, really. Bitz comes a little bit further on in the magazine. So on this one, it begins with a personal file of Linton Beckles from Central Line. And then those photos. The first one is Steve Norman from Spandau Ballet having a bit of fisticuffs with the boxer John Conte. Rich, do you want to tell us what all that's about?
Well, interestingly, it's talking about the shoot for the communication video for Spandau Ballet, but anybody who's seen it, and I've seen it about 6 times in the last 2-3 days, none of the band appear in it. It's only Hadley who appears in it, and John Conte plays. Well, I think he's a villain. I think he's a baddie. But it's all filmed down in London Docks, where Canary Wharf is now, I think. I mean, it's all along that. I was sort of looking into it, and there's a Depeche Mode video that was shot down there, and Long Good Friday. And then Limehouse Studios was there, where they used to do Spit and Image and Treasure Hunt. And I saw a music show called Rock in the Dock recorded there in 85 with Mary Wilson was the guest act. So yeah, that bit of Docklands, which is now Canary Wharf, or that's where they are. And it's I think the pitch went that it's we want to do a kind of Cold War espionage type set up with Hadley as this sort of super spy and John Conte as this sort of Mr. Big. But I think the reality is that they ended up in Woolwich Arsenal with Leslie Ash and a Ford Capri. I think that's basically what happened. They just didn't have any money. So, but yeah, it's actually quite a good video. And Hadley does a pretty good turn as a sort of spy in a leather map, wandering around Woolwich Ferry with his very big camera. And there's a lovely car stunt in it where the two cars are racing down, and Hadley generally looks like he's really driving it and in amongst it. But yeah, in the short answer to your question is yes, that's what this photo is about.
The basic synopsis of it, I think from watching it a few times, is Tony Hadley is very sophisticated because at the start he's listening to classical music, which is a shorthand for sophistication, sitting around with Leslie Ash doing that. Then he gets a phone call from John Conte, who seems to be hiring him to then take photos of John Conte. I don't quite know what that's about, with his camera gun. And then Leslie Ash disappears with John Conte, and he doesn't know that at first, and he has to blow up some photos to see that actually she was in the back of his car. Then he has a bit of a car chase, and then he gets so upset by seeing this enlarged photo of Leslie Ash in the back of John Conte's car that he drops a trim phone on the enlarged exposure of her. That's pretty much it, isn't it? It makes that much sense.
Yeah, I can see why they made it. That's a beautiful pitch.
Yeah, I mean, it's from that time when the scale and ambition of videos was pop promos was starting to grow. You know, it's more than just a band in a studio miming along to the latest song or recreating a live performance sort of situation. Yeah. There's a whole kind of thing going on here where they're almost trying to recreate a film within 3-4 minutes.
Yeah. In Woolwich.
Below that is a photo of Toyah with her Mini Pops double, which is, again, something that I've managed to find on YouTube, added to the playlist. The Mini Pops singing Toyah's I Wanna Be Free.
I can't watch those things.
Well, even at the time, you know, I was probably the perfect age, you know, and 9 years old, 10 years old when Mini Pops was on, because that was early days of Channel 4. But even then, I knew it was wrong, you know. It made my skin crawl in a way that I just can't find the words to express it. But watching that clip back, it's quite impressive in that it's all done as a single one-camera shot. So they've got this girl she's actually taller than Toyah, but probably about 11 years old. and doing this quite engaging performance straight to camera for that whole kind of 2 minutes. So yeah, go and have a look at that on the playlist if you dare.
I did Google the production designer at Mini Pops, and who's a designer called Keith Wilson, who had designed the new Avengers and Space 1999 amongst other things. And he ended up doing Mini Pops. God bless him. But yeah, it's great because they kind of do urban. It's basically the mini Toyah just sort of peering through, wire railings. You know, that's essentially there, and lots of smoke, and that's ticking the urban box by them doing that. So yeah.
Then we move on to the main page of Start, and there's a group photo there of lots of pop stars. Who have we got in there? We've got some Bananaramas, a few Belle Stars, Kim Wilde, and lurking at the back, Dave Lee Travis. But enough, less said about that, the better. And this is for the Rock and Pop Awards that had taken place at...
It was in the Lyceum. Yeah,
and Rich, you found a few clips of that, which on YouTube, which we've stuck on the playlist there of Anne Diamond and David Kidd Jensen as the presenters for this.
Anne Diamond with a very fetching headband as well, which I thought, kind of Le Bon-esque headband. I went to, the first gig I ever saw at the Lyceum was the end of '83, so looking at that clip is really weird because I'm thinking, well, in less than a year's time I'm going to be there seeing John Fox and lots of dry ice. So yeah, there's a great clip. The Belle Stars clip at the end is brilliant. I had that Belle Stars album. I had a bit of a crush on several members of Belle Stars at the time. And then in amongst it is somebody who's very 80s, is the guy from Coronation Street who's just in there What's his name? I wrote
Chris Quentin.
Yes.
I was going to say, that makes it the most 80s photo ever, doesn't it? Because he's in it.
He's in it and loving every second of it by the looks of it.
Yeah, and also in the throng is Smash Hit's very own Bev Hillier. There's a little photo of her posing with Boy George as well. And next to that, a little photo of JoBoxers introducing us to the band.
We'll talk about the singles, but my mate actually came round earlier this evening, who I said was in the video, and I asked him about their look, and he said apparently, because we talked about it earlier in the week, thinking it might be something to do with Dexys, but actually he told me that the look was based on a group of guys called the Dead End Kids, who were around in the 30s and then the 50s, and it's Angels with Dirty Faces, and it's that particular film and that look is what Dig based the JoBoxers look on. So now you know.
Good fact-finding.
And they went on to influence Peaky Blinders by the looks of things as well. A connection between JoBoxers and Spandau Ballet, or rather the videos, because I think it's the video for the second single. Was it Just Got Lucky?
Yeah, it's shot in the same place. It's all sitting and around. And working in the film business, I kind of know how that works, because you kind of get to know of a location that's available, and every idiot wants to use it. So, in fact, it looks like that JoBoxers photo is actually taken down there anyway. But yeah, I just guess it's a sort of, a location becomes available, and then everybody just wants to dive in and use it because people are lazy.
So moving on to our first feature, and we get quite quickly into the features, and it's the Cover Stars Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, or OMD by this time, as I think they're being commonly referred to. And this was with your man Mark Allen going down to meet them. Gav, do you want to set the scene for us here?
Yeah, so I talked before about the semaphore flags, and down the left-hand side of the interview, each member of the band is holding the flags in a certain style. And I was having a look yesterday. I was like, I wonder if it's some kind of secret code. And it seems to be 6 BMX. Now, I don't know if that's what they had for Christmas, just passed, or what they'd wanted. I'm not quite sure, but I think it's a coded message from the lads of OMD about BMX bikes. I don't know if there's anyone else out there that's more of an expert in semaphore than I am.
I used to do it. I used to do semaphore. Well, God. I can only go so far. I was there's a confession. I never thought I'd ever say this ever. I was a sea cadet back in the late 70s. Not very punk, and I can't even describe this because this is a sort of a non-visual medium, but you basically go A, B, C, D. You kind of do that. So I could go like the first 12, 15 letters, and then you end up doing all the crossing of the hands. So I was just looking at it. I did wonder whether they're just spelling out the first letter of their name. But I suspect, being OMD, it's probably a little bit more cleverer than that. I like the BMX thing, though.
Well, it's a theory.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
I'm like a pop kid, Dan Brown, trying to work out the way these little tentacles fit together, So we get to the interview itself. And it finds OMD in a strange kind of place, really. So Architecture and Morality was a big hit, and they talk about how many thousand copies they sold in the interview. And they're just on the cusp of releasing Dazzle Ships, which, has gone on since to become very critically lauded. But at the time, commercially, it wasn't as successful as the previous record. And you really get a sense in this interview of them being a bit out of step with the Giddy Carousel of Pop. Not the podcast, but the actual world of pop that they were moving in, and their place in it, and wondering exactly where they fitted in. I'll give you a little taster from the interview that kind of gives you an idea of where OMD saw themselves at this time. So from Mark's piece, he says, as they'll repeatedly tell you, OMD don't want to be pop stars, and they certainly dress accordingly. Having wandered through the cool, airless corridors of the Holiday Inn at Swiss Cottage, past echoing pools squirming with bronzed, martini-supping maidens and low-lit bars, being propped by dapper media men in sparkly shirts, the sight of Andy McCluskey emerging from his hotel room appears faintly ridiculous. Chunky Fair Isle sweater, thick practical cords, he's in the process of clambering into hardy lace-up shoes, the sort you'd expect to conceal a compass in the heel. The quieter Paul Humphries is a little different. Parallel trousers, a pastel V-neck just revealing a button-down collar and tie. He has the neat but still slightly crumpled air of a science student at a vicarage tea party. The pile of books on genetics stacked on the table complete the image. I suddenly get the feeling I'm about to be lectured. We've never rabbited on about unemployment or nuclear weapons, announces Andy before the tea's even arrived. We consider those to be trivia, to be symptoms of a larger problem. He leans back. And that is the entire mental framework of the human species. An uneasy silence. And that, he says, pointing at the books, is where genetics comes in. So it's not your typical Spandau Ballet kind of interview or, whatever. It's a little bit more serious. And they talk about going off to Germany for a tour and feeling like they didn't really know what they wanted from their musical career. They talk about having Genesis' tour manager, and it says the manager had told them that OMD would be BIG, the next Genesis, the next Pink Floyd, 15 lorries just for lighting rig, all dry ice and flying pigs, that kind of stuff. There was an air, says Andy, if you're on your way, lads, keep it up for a few more years. Be predictable, couple more big tours and you're there. And we thought, we don't want this. We don't want a career. Help! We were going to be old before we were even 24. So it's amazing to think how young they were. And they were already terrified, really, of being, predictable and churning out the same sort of stuff. They obviously had ideas that were kind of grander than that, but I guess they just didn't know quite where they fitted in. They talk later on in the article about hating Top of the Pops and performing on there. So, yeah, like I say, every kind of smash hits that we do, or pretty much everyone from around this era, I don't know, Si, if you've noticed this, but there always seems to be at least one interview with a band that don't seem to be enjoying their ride on the Giddy Carousel. And I think we found this issue's one.
And I love that they're staying in the Holiday Inn in Swiss Cottage. That just made me laugh. Having lived above a Holiday Inn down in Brighton, and I found this clip. This is sort of slightly going off piece, but I found this clip of Nationwide doing Bowie on the Aladdin Sane tour. He stayed at the Holiday Inn in Brighton, and there's some footage of him. And I always thought it was incredible that there's this footage of Bowie coming out the door that I used to come out every morning to go to work. So the Holiday Inn was definitely the place for pop stars to go when they were on tour.
Thompson Holidays, a feature on the Thompson Twins. This is Peter Martin, who's talking to the Thompson Twins, who seem like much more willing participants of the whole pop world and enjoying their ride on the Giddy Carousel of Pop, definitely. There's such a huge contrast between this piece and the OMD piece that we were just looking at. It talks about this in the piece, in that it was quite a large and shambolic band, and they trimmed down the members down to the core three-piece that we all know and love. And I think they were kind of really focused, but also having a lot of fun with it, certainly in the first couple of years.
That Quick Step and Sidekick album, there's an advert for it later in the issue. It's a great album, really good, and Love on Your Side and Lies, a really good single, and We Are Detectives, a really good single. They absolutely nailed it with the kind of, because there was a particular logo, a font for the typeface for their band name, and then they had that, they cottoned onto this image very early doors of the outline of their heads. There was like 3 heads, and certainly by the time you get to the Gap album, which is the really big album for them, that's their kind of branding and just features here, there and everywhere. I just thought, at the time, I thought they were great, and the 12-inch mixes were always very good, and they were a good outfit then. It all goes a bit south when they get to King for a Day and later on, but at this moment, I thought they were fantastic.
Well, I think that there's a reason why it might go south a bit, and I think it's because they really broke through big in America. And a big part of this feature is about their success in the States. They're just about to go off on a 3-month US tour. It mentions that they're currently enjoying their second US disco #1 with Lies, the first being In the Name of Love, which stayed at the top for 5 weeks. And it also mentions a US TV special. It says that featured the best of British acts such as ABC, The Human League and Dexys. The surprising thing was that the Twins actually headlined the whole event. Thompson Mania, just wait and see. But like many other British bands, of this era, so Culture Club, Duran Duran especially, who got a lot of success in the States. And I think that's probably largely due to MTV. I think that's a commonly well-known thing, that these British bands were putting out singles with videos. And so MTV were picking up on these things. And I think that's responsible for this, what they call the second British invasion. And we'll come to that a little bit more in bits as well. But I think this is where it goes wrong for the Thompson Twins, and possibly for a few other British acts, in that this American success becomes the thing that they then have to maintain, and then they find themselves working towards that formula to suit American radio, rather than doing what they were doing, without that kind of influence or direction. And that's when it all starts to kind of turn a little bit. We see it with Duran Duran, and we see it with Spandau Ballet, kind of transformed in this, this year, 83, 84, and that's where we see those bands that have come up maybe through the new romantic period and into early 83 getting that American success, and then how it changes them, and how they then struggle with that.
Yeah, Joe says we're not in our passionate period at the moment. We've had our cult phase, now it's time for our weird commercial phase. But then, as you say, Si, that weird commercial phase then just becomes the commercial phase and less weird. I think that's what happens. They lose the weird. Yeah,
and this is where Alana Curry comes in. She says, I like disposable pop. For instance, my favourite song at the moment is that In Deep single. I'm guessing that she's talking about Last Night a DJ Saved My Life. It's really bland and repetitive, but it's empty enough to fill your own imagination, which I think is really important. That way, she adds rather mysteriously, you can add something of yourself to each song.
She always struck me as being quite fiery, Alana Curry. I wouldn't like to have a row with her.
She was, they kind of grew up in the squat scene in London, and she was in a band called the Unfuckables.
Oh, nice.
Which, didn't get mentioned in Smash Hits, but there we go.
Funny that.
Yeah. And also, she's married, this blew my mind, I found out she's married to Jimmy Corti out of KLF, and has been married to him for quite a while now. So,
nice.
Yeah, she's still working as an artist and doing her thing, yeah. So, fair play to him, I say.
Then we get to Bitz, what I always call the beating heart of Smash Hits. Neil Tennant is the editor of Bitz at this point in Smash Hits history. And it starts with the Belle Stars, talking about a recent trip to Japan. The Belle Stars have been to Japan. Why? Why does anyone go to Japan? We were doing a TV commercial for beer, says Jenny Belle Star, following hot on the heels of other Nipponese commercial stars like David Bowie, Bananarama and Madness. And she goes on to say that they think they were booked to do it because there were so many members of Belle Stars that they kind of maybe looked a bit like a female Madness.
Well, they were stiff records, weren't they? The Belle Stars. So yeah,
they were stiff records. Yeah,
some deal gone on.
Yeah, and there was lots of things going on here. Neil Tennant gets to choose his 5 favourite songs of the day. He chooses Africa Bambatas and Soul Sonic Force, Looking for the Perfect Beat, Forest and Rock the Boat, Yvonne Elliman, Love Pains, Yarborough and Peoples, Heartbeats and Aztec Camera, Oblivious.
The Neil Tennant talking about Love Pains, because he did that. They did that with Liza Minnelli, didn't they? The Pet Shop Boys. That was one of her solo singles that the Pet Shop Boys did. So possibly that's where that seed was sown. Pop Kids.
And next to that, a little bit on David Bowie. It says The Fin White Duke, that's Fin, mentioning that he's signed to EMI Records or EMI America. I think it was an undisclosed sum, but they say here that it's a rumour to be $17.5 million. It says, a new single should appear in March, which I went out and bought. This is just as I massively got into David Bowie. As we moved house, one of my brothers came to visit and he dropped off a load of LPs for safekeeping, which was pretty much all David Bowie's back catalogue up to that point. And I'd got a few singles, but then on my little £20 stretcher record player in my bedroom, just set 2 on these albums, and that's when I really, really got into David Bowie. So 3 weeks later, whenever it was, a month later, when Let's Dance came out, I was straight down Woolworths. Me and my dad Me and my dad were on a really early bus on a Saturday morning, the X29, into town, which was now, because we used to live quite near the city centre of Sheffield, and we were now kind of 10 miles out of the city centre, so it's quite a long bus journey. And he wanted to buy a lawnmower, and I'd gone into town with him, especially to buy the Let's Dance single. So, yeah, it mentions the single in March, which was Let's Dance, and Let's Dance, the album, in April. And he says, while the British leg of his world tour should happen in May, June. And I think that was somebody's first gig, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, isn't it weird that this is possibly where I read about that for the first time? Yeah, because I went to that was the Milton Keynes gigs. And that was my first gig. And I'm going to mention Icehouse again, because they were the support band, weren't they?
They were the support band, yeah.
Yeah, and the Beat, which was the Beat's last gig as the original Beat lineup. They never performed again live together. It was weird just looking at this magazine again, at this issue again, rather, and seeing that, because, yeah, that's probably where the idea popped into my head, and me and my mate Jeff went off and saw Bowie in the summer.
Do you remember much about the gig other than the support bands?
I just remember, yeah, I do. I mean, it's sort of oddly, it sort of cropped up a few times recently in conversation. I just remember it being blisteringly hot. It was a really hot weekend, and I think he had planned to do 2 nights, and then they added the third. So there was the Saturday and Sunday. So I think it was the 2nd and 3rd of July, and then the Friday was an extra date that he announced. We had already obviously got tickets for the Saturday. I can't remember where I bought them. I just remember them being £10, which feels like a truckload of money back in 1983. But I bumped into somebody I knew there, which was really weird, in the toilets. And I just remember seeing a sea of people. I mean, I'd never seen... I mean, it's 80,000, 85,000 people. I'd never seen that many people in one place in my life. So, yeah. But it was great. And it was, I was sort of fudging it a little bit, because I was a sort of getting into Bowie. I think I'd sort of Scary Monsters I sort of knew about, and Changes One I knew about. My mate Jeff was a bigger music, buying more records than I ever did. So I was forever borrowing stuff off of him. I didn't know every song, so there was a bit of sort of fake karaoke going on when we were surrounded by people who knew every word and every, But I remember it as an experience. I think that's probably the best thing. And they had a giant screen, which again, I think because it's Bowie, it was probably one of the first in the country. So these things called a Jumbotron, which was this really big telly on top of the stage. And so just having that was very exciting, and being able to be that far back as we were, but still being able to see his face was just very novel. It just felt like quite exciting. But yeah, good times.
And I should actually mention that the Finn reference in that little headline for that is that David Bowie's also got a little cameo in the film Yellowbeard, where he plays a shark. So that's mentioned. So rather tenuous, but there you go. Now, what was the other thing? Yeah, so just comparing Neil Tennant's 5 songs of the moment to opposite that on the same page, Fish from Marillion, who I think were probably enjoying their first taste of chart success around about that time. And Fisher's top 10, and I think it's probably albums. Let's just run through them quickly here, and you can make your own mind up as to where Fish is at. And some of this, well, most of this won't be surprising anyway whatsoever. Number 1, he's got Pink Floyd and The Wall. Number 2, Genesis, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. 3, Peter Hamill and Over. Number 4, Yes, Close to the Edge. Number 5, Kate Bush, The Dreaming. Number 6, Random Hold, The View from Here. And then I think he's trying to get a bit hip and with it from this point on, with The Teardrop Explodes, Kilimanjaro, The Doors and their first album, Ultravox and Vienna, and then one from just the year before, ABC's The Lexicon of Love. So I think he's trying to show that he's a man of many tastes there, but it's very prog heavy, and that just weighs it down.
Yeah,
I just wrote predictably proggy. That was what I wrote, and then I put could be an album title.
It's very serious. He was only 25 at that point.
Oh wow!
It's like the absolute opposite of Neil Tennant. I mean, I guess he was a similar kind of age to Neil Tennant.
Yeah.
But they couldn't be more different, could they?
But I like the kind of scope and range of artists that are being featured in this issue of Smash Hits, because they're at the top of the page. Laurie Anderson, of course, she'd been in the charts quite recently with the still fantastic Oh Superman, a song that just gets better, I think, as the years go by. Also announced in this issue of Smash Hits is Paul Weller's new group will be called the Style Council. At present, he has only one recruit, Mick Talbot, ex-Merton Parkers in the Bureau, who Paul reckons is the finest young soul jazz organist in the country. But others will be enlisted when he finds them. And if you saw the Sky Arts documentary about the Style Council last year, you'll know all about that. And if you didn't see it, find it, watch it. Brilliant, brilliant stuff.
And we've also got bloody Toto again, haven't we?
Bloody Toto.
Look, what are they wearing, for fuck's sake? I mean, really.
Smash Hits resident fashion editor there.
I know it was the 1980s, but there's no excuse to look like that, is there?
No.
They make Bill Werbenook look good, you know. I don't know. It's a bad.
I was just about to say they look like the Match Room.
Yeah.
There's another reference for the kids.
There's a definite early 80s kind of snooker vibe going on there, isn't there? On some of them. Absolutely woeful.
They all need a trip to the hairdressers, I reckon. I mean, look at the hair on that lot, eh?
They've got lockdown hair before lockdown was a thing. Very ahead of the time.
But just above that says, yet more UK groups stormed the US singles chart. At time of writing, The Clash are number 8, Phil Collins, 10, Adamant, number 12, Musical Youth, number 13, Culture Club at number 18, Duran Duran, number 19, A Flock of Seagulls at number 30, Joe Jackson, 33, Dexys at 47, ABC at 49, and Thompson Twins at 55. It's quite incredible when you see that. And I guess this is the second British invasion that they were experiencing in the USA. But of course, to us, this was just all the bands that were just normally in our charts. But it is a reminder of how much good pop music was coming out of this country at this time. We turn the page, we get a couple more lyrics. Rocker's Revenge, The Harder They Come, where, it's a cover of the Jimmy Cliff song, The Harder They Come, but Mr. Rocker's Revenge seems to sing Rocker's Revenge in it quite a lot, just so you don't forget who you're listening to. And next to that, squeezed in, just down the edge of the page, Level 42 and The Chinese Way.
Oh, I was looking through these lyrics. They're amazing. It says, take a journey back in time, leave the Western world behind. Cross the mountains to Peking, where the paper lanterns gently swing. And then it goes, my eyes wide open, I feel a breeze. Words softly spoken in Cantonese. And then my favourite bit. Standing at the master's side, then with patience he confides. Secret knowledge, sacred ways, pearls of wisdom from the dragon days. I just thought it was fantastic, that. I love it. It's Oriental jazz funk. It's brilliant. It's a very niche kind of thing, that, isn't it?
Yeah, with all the depth of the local Chinese takeaway menu, I think.
Yeah, I felt like Mark King had really understood the Chinese culture there with those lyrics. He'd really dived deep, hadn't he, into put himself in there and came up with those. That's amazing. Some great poetry there. I think has echoed down the ages. It still appeals now, all these years later. There's depth and truth in them there words.
That was a good day's work there for Mark King. Never mind his thumbs.
Fantastic.
And then we get into another Smash It staple of the day, Get Smart. Linda, who answers your questions. And crikey, she's got a lot of questions to answer in this one. She's like a one-woman Google before Google existed. And the first question, referring back to an artist that we've already encountered in this issue with... well, we can say the name of the programme and we won't say the name of the person, but you'll know who the person is. Can you tell me if Musical Youth sing the signature tune to Jim'll Fix It, as I reckon they do, but my sister disagrees? Devoted of Berry. You win the bet is the answer. They recorded it especially for the programme and about 2 months ago, and it's now turned up on the B-side of their current single, Never Gonna Give You Up. And indeed, that is true. Again, one that you'll find on the YouTube playlist for this edition of the Giddy Carousel of Pop. Funnily enough, not on Spotify. You can't find it on there. But Julian Cope question about him. Now that the Teardrop Explodes have split, could you please tell me what Julian Cope is up to in the musical world, and if When I Dream from Kilimanjaro was ever released as a single? That's Steve Horton in McGull. Yeah, I mean, the burning question there about When I Dream, was it ever released as a single? But I like the answer. Having spent some time rehearsing and putting together a band in Liverpool, Cope has just recorded a session for the John Peel Show on Radio 1, and by all accounts appears to be back on form again after a troublesome last 6 months. That's troublesome, and inverted commas. And When I Dream was indeed released as a single around September 1980. But yeah, I think, Julian Cope and troublesome. That ain't the half of it if you've ever read Head On and Repossessed. And there's somebody moaning on about the Olivia Newton-John fan club.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
They sent a letter to the Olivia Newton-John fan club, and it was returned to them. And, just having a right old moan about fan clubs and stuff like that. So I'm just curious to know, while we're talking about fan clubs, were either of you ever a member of any fan clubs for pop stars?
Adam and the Ants. Ant Warrior. I was an Ant Warrior, yeah. I've got my my little card somewhere still.
What about you, Rich?
I have a confession to make. It's not a good confession. I was a Howard Jones fan club member for about a year. I'm really sorry. I was far too old. I didn't know what I was doing.
What sort of stuff do you get from that? Did you get some mental change from it or something?
You used to get a single. That first year I was a member, you got a 7-inch single with two live tracks on. But I saw him at the end of 83 at the Lyceum, and I joined the fan club, but again, probably far too old to be joining fan clubs. So, I did. I confess now I was a Howard Jones fan club member, but the less said about that, the better. I did like that thing in that about Olivia Newton-John where they advise ELO fans are advised to stop writing. It's just made me.
How many of them were there?
Yeah, the ELO fan club has ceased operations. And any new members who may want to join are advised not to write. And then somebody has spotted Bono wearing a Smash Hits t-shirt on a recent appearance on the Tube. Who was it? Claire in Radlett was asking if these t-shirts were still available. But they were advertised in the summer of 1980 and well and truly sold out by this point. But next issue of Smash Hits, you get some free badges, so all's not lost, Claire. We turn the page once more. Ooh. There's a feature called The Chinese Way, but it's not level 42, not making a return here. It's about China Crisis. There's two sides to the China Crisis story. One's called Gary, the other's Eddie. Actually, there's the third side, the bloke who wrote it, Neil Tennant. And Neil speaks to the members of China Crisis individually. And again, an interesting piece in that they'd only just recently made the charts with Christian. And they're very, very young.
But they look older. Did you not think? I just thought they looked a lot older than they are.
Yeah. And the music would suggest that they're a lot older than they are. But I think they're both still living at home with their parents in Kirby, just outside Liverpool. And nobody's given them any training on how to be a pop star or anything like that. It's very quite honest answers, but not particularly entertaining in any way.
There certainly is a lack of entertainment in this, isn't there? It's a bit like the OMD one, really, in that it's quite serious and there's not a lot of fun in it. You know, we think of Smash Hits from around this time as having a lot of humour, and there's very, very little humour to be rinsed out of this.
Well, maybe it's something to do with bands from Liverpool this period. I don't know. I mean, Liverpool wasn't a particularly happy place to come from at this time. And, you know, it's not long before this that Boys from the Black stuff was on. You know, I remember watching that as a kid thinking that it was a comedy and was waiting for the laughs. But anyway, but I think the most revealing parts of this is when they're talking about the background. There's one question: how does living in Liverpool affect you? And the answer from Gary, he says, just having friends and family, knowing that your mom works nights at Jacobs and your dad goes out and works as a painter and decorator and your two brothers go out doing roof tiling. That's what I was doing before I was in the group. It's just that basic, really. And knowing what you're doing is not a job, it's a career. So I think you get a real kind of hard blast of real life. And certainly, that's the kind of background that I would have known, with brothers who, worked down the pit or as a milkman. My dad worked on the buses and things like that. So I think maybe it is actually quite relatable in that way. But also, Neil asks, what's your home like? And Ed's response to this, so he says, it's a 4-bedroomed house and it's really run down. We had to have a big house because there was a lot of kids. Until I was 15, I never had my own bed. I had to share with my brother because there were so many of us. But now I've got my own room.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, he's got a deal with Virgin Records. He's in the charts in his early 20s and yet still talking about only just getting his own bedroom.
Yeah, because Gary's still sharing a room with his brother.
Yeah, he is as well. Yeah.
So he's not even made it to those heights yet. He's still sharing.
Yeah. Now, and I think this question is a bit rich coming from Neil Tennant, knowing what we know about what Neil Tennant went on to do. He asked them, are you just another synthesizer duo?
Oh.
So he's clearly sussing out the competition there.
Because I bought Christian on 12-inch, and I thought that was where they were heading in that sort of synthy sound. And obviously they went off in a sort of slightly Tears for Fears-y direction, I guess, would be the nearest
I think that's fair
thing.
to say, yeah.
But yeah, I loved Christian as a single when it first came out. I thought there's a piece in the article where they talk about the washing machine getting fixed.
Yeah.
You must have seen that. But It's quite specific about 15 quid for a new pump. It's a very specific thing. You couldn't imagine Rihanna talking about anything like that now, could you?
Definitely not.
Or could you?
No,
I don't know.
you couldn't. It's like you say, it's very much kind of rooted in reality, isn't it, of life, and and the way they've lived it, and they're kind of quite embarrassed really about being pop stars. There's a funny little thing that happens before the interview begins, and Neil's talking about meeting them. They've got the train from Kirby, and he meets them in the city centre in Liverpool. And it says, with Gary's little case and Eddie's neat tweed jacket, they didn't really look like pop stars. But this week they were celebrating their first week in the top 30. To make the point, 2 young girls stopped them in the street to ask them for their autographs. Eddie ran off embarrassed. Gary signed. And, just the fact that one of them is too embarrassed to even deal with signing a couple of autographs, it kind of tells you how they're feeling, emotionally and coping with it all. And that was an interesting kind of little peek into their psyche, really. Also, another question that Neil asks as well that made me chuckle was at the end, where he says, quite pointedly, what's the point of China crisis? It's rude. A little rude, isn't it? Maybe if they'd been together, I was thinking if they'd been interviewed together, they might have sparked off each other a little bit more and maybe had a bit more fun with it. But perhaps because they're on their own and they're so young and that they're very much in the early days of their kind of pop career, so they're quite serious. And Gary says a sense of understanding, just being able to associate with certain things in the lyrics. And then Ed says there's no big point about it. And again, it's that thing about them being very rooted in life. He says, I'm not trying to preach to anyone or tell anyone what to do. They're really simple songs, just observations. So although there's not a lot of fun to be had from it, but as a kind of, without getting too heavy about it, almost as a kind of a social bit of history and, and a snapshot of the world that they were living in at the time, it's probably more revealing than a lot of other interviews would have been.
So by contrast, we turn the page and we find ourselves in the Hammersmith Odeon with Dave Rimmer reporting on a gig that's happening there called the Total Experience Tour, which is the record label that boasts the Gap Band and Yarborough and Peoples as well, and some guy called Robert Goody Whitfield. And Dave's backstage at one point. Well, actually, he does some star spotting in the audience, first of all, and he sees Paul Weller, Lee John and Errol Kennedy from Imagination, ex-Lynxer David Grant, 3 of the Gang of 4, so that'd be Gang of 3, and Soul veteran Isaac Hayes. Now, he's backstage, deep in the murky bowels of the Odeon. All is not well, writes Dave. Somebody has got the Gap Band's trousers mixed up in their dressing room. Charlie, one of the 3 Wilson brothers, who are the nucleus of the Gaps, holds up a silvery sequined pair of strides that no sane human being would be seen dead in. "These aren't my shingles," he exclaims disgustedly. "These are Robert's." He throws them down.
It's the fact that they call them the missing Baco foil kecks.
That's what really made me laugh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and spangly combat gear. So there's a kind of, the fashion correspondent is working overtime.
Apparently there are no trouser troubles with Yarborough and Peoples declares her ambition while in England is to sample some shepherd's pie. Yarborough had some once and he loved it.
Hot news.
Well, let's jump straight into the centre spread, shall we? And Spandau Ballet, staring out us from the page there. Tony Hadley in blue shirt and braces. In fact, the braces on the other guy as well, the sax player.
Steve Norman.
Oh, yeah, that's the fella. And Gary Kemp in a rather fetching sailor's outfit. Now, Rich, you're leafing through your original edition of Smash Hits, and yours is missing this poster.
I'm missing the poster, but Gav's showing it to me in all its glory. So, but oddly, I remembered it, and I remembered that sailor top, and I don't know why. It's really weird, sort of mind memory of that poster.
Do you think it made it to your bedroom wall?
No, definitely didn't make it. I don't know where it's gone. I mean, this is interesting, this issue, because just saying about, you were saying earlier about Spandau, this is pre-True. One of the defining songs of the 80s. And we're not at that point yet. It's almost like hard to imagine a world without True by Spandau Ballet. It's one of the most recognisable songs ever written. And we're not there yet in this issue.
Well, the True album is just about to come out. I think it comes out the following month. And then I think the single... let's have a look. I've got my Guinness Book of British Hit Singles here. Always have this on standby. The single True got to number 1 in April of 83.
So we're quite close then. So it might have been on the radio by then.
Yeah, so... Communication, which is a single that was out around the time that this edition of Smash Hits was out, was from the True album, as was the single before, Lifeline. But there's no real indication that they've got True and Gold up their sleeves, both from the same album that's just about to come out. But there's absolutely no indication whatsoever that those two songs are about to come out and transform the world's view of Spandau Ballet.
Hen parties forevermore.
Yeah, that as well.
Yeah.
Next page, we've got a full-page advert for Haysi Fantayzee's Battle Hymns for Children Singing, which, as I said earlier on, I went out and bought at the time because I bloody love John Wayne's Big Leggy. And Shiny and Holy Joe, they were just, I think, they were the closest I'd got back to Adamant, I think, in that kind of just odd, taking bits from different styles and mixing it all up in a weird pop way. And obviously Kate Garner confused me a lot as a young man, but in all the right ways.
Yeah, and Kate Garner was gorgeous, wasn't she? I mean, she's stunning.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to the album. I must have given it away, a few years later when I rid myself of my childish pop things, and I really regret it now. I've still got the singles, but I don't have the album. I need to get hold of a copy from somewhere. So they kind of mixed pop and fun with quite a dark, disturbing undertones as well,
Well, he's got the child catcher thing going on.
He really has, hasn't he?
Chitty Bang Bang. But they were kind of pals of McLaren. They were all part of that crowd. There was a sort of fashion term that McLaren and Westwood came up with, and I think it was called Buffalo. And Garner and Jeremy Healy were part of the Blitz crowd, I think, and later on. So they all knew each other, and they were all a kind of melting pot. And I think I read somewhere that, a bit like Adamant, where they raided the sort of bins of Burnham and Nathan's costumiers, and that's where he got his outfit with all the braiding on.
Yeah.
I think a similar thing happened with Jeremy Healy and how he came up with this outfit. I think they raided an old theatrical costumiers, or there was a sale or something, and they just grabbed what they could and turned it into this thing. But yeah, he's the child catcher. I mean, he's scary. He's really scary. And she's just looks awesome. Absolutely awesome. She's a photographer now. I follow her on Instagram, and she sort of became a sort of fashion photographer and sort of lives somewhere out in the States now, and just does her own thing. But yeah, just phenomenal.
We then come to the singles review, and it doesn't say who's done them in this issue. It's normally credited to someone, but no one takes credit in this particular issue of Hits. But single of the fortnight goes to JoBoxers and Boxer Beat. The reviewer saying, I don't mind girls who want to look like Bananarama, but when the boys start... Hopefully it'll be bands like the stunning JoBoxers who will blow all the pouting pretties back whence they came. No synths, no wimpy vocals. Boxer Beat is a real barnstorming debut with native New Yorker Dig Wayne leading Vic Goddard's old band through a thunderous stomp which has captured all the passion of old 1960s soul. Watch 'em go.
Yeah.
Wow.
A glowing review, but completely putting down synth pop there. Rich.
True.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I did buy it. I bought it, and I bought Just Got Lucky as well. Doing a little bit of reading up about it, did you know that the boxer beat is actually the beat of the song? That's what a boxer beat is. So it's the beat that goes on there. Apparently, that's where it comes from.
I didn't know that.
But I really liked it, and a mate of mine is in the video, which they filmed in a pie and mash shop in East London. And so he appears in the background, jumping up and down on tables. And he did tell me that they broke one of the tables and the record company wasn't very happy. So,
oops.
But yeah, I loved it at the time. It's great. And Dig Wayne's one of the first pop stars I ever saw in the wild. I remember coming out of Tottenham Court Road to go to the aforementioned Virgin record store, and he was going in and passing him and just doing a clock and thinking, I know who that is. That's somebody famous. He was one of the first pop stars I ever saw in the flesh. Yeah, I like it.
It's a great tune, isn't it? And the energy's good in the video as well. One thing I should just mention, it is actually very hard to do the boxer beat because you have to make the blind so they see and the sad one's happy. And I think it's quite a tricky ask of a 12-year-old lad, I wanted to do the boxer beat, but I couldn't cure blindness in people, so I don't know. They should have rethought that, I think.
Oh, I was just going to say that it's almost thrown away that we just talked about True, and there's the review of Sweet Dreams by Eurythmics here, and it's sort of mixed in with Men Without Hats and Cash Flow, and it's almost like this is one of the big records of the 1980s. This is. If there's ever a compilation show of the 80s, chances are you will hear a bit of Sweet Dreams. And it's almost lost in a review with two other records. It's really, really odd. And it's sort of unusual that they've done it because everywhere else that is a single review, they've kind of bunched them together.
Yeah. Talking, Richard, about kind of reviews almost being thrown away in amongst everything else. And you've got Orange Juice, Rip It Up, almost casually dismissed there, haven't you? It says nothing to do with Little Richard's moment of mayhem. In fact, this lot would find it difficult to rip their way out of a wet paper bag. Oh well, if all else fails, copy the Belle Stars and drag out that jangly James Brown guitar. And, Rip It Up, what a single that is. It's really tossed away, isn't it? Like, they're copying the Belle Stars and that's it,
Yeah. How can you deny yourself that pleasure?
I find it hard to believe that someone would listen to that and go, there's nothing in this. There's nothing life-affirming or joyous in this that will brighten up people's days. It's just a very run-of-the-mill thing. It's a wonderful song. I
think it's amazing looking at these reviews is that there's how many of these records I didn't know.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I can't, because when somebody... I'm of that age where I think, well, I know lots of 80s records, I know them all. And you look at these singles here, and it actually happens on the albums as well, you think, I don't know half of these.
Yeah. And again, I think it's straying into that more nighttime Radio 1, Enemy, an almost whistle test kind of territory, with bands like Wall of Voodoo, certainly, and Pig Bag. The only kind of recognisable pop stars that you would have spotted straight away would be OMD, Madness are in there,
Blancmange,
Matchbox.
Yeah.
I just like the opening sentence. There's not many rock and roll acts who are worse than Shakin' Stevens, but here's one.
Ouch.
But lurking amongst all these singles reviews, a future number one by the one and only Bonnie Tyler, Total Eclipse of the Heart. Gin Steinman, who wrote this, doesn't write songs, he writes 5-minute operas. This is an epic tearjerker, very much in his Meatloaf fame, but one which suggests that the combination of the Welsh gal's gutsy voice and Springsteen's E Street Band is a winner. And I suppose this would be a good opportunity to discuss, or at least, highlight the, I think we can call it a classic video. It's one that we all remember, I think, from seeing on Top of the Pops back in the day. I remember there being some sort of, and possibly some sort of urban myth or something like that, but a rumour went round that there was an actual ghost in the video. But when I've searched this on the internet, I can't find any mention of that. So that was maybe just my sister trying to wind me up or something like that. I don't know.
I never heard that before.
No, I hadn't.
I mean, it's really the campest, just funniest epic of the whole decade, really, isn't it? It's the most 80s video. What I love about it is you've got all the cliches of 80s videos. So you've got the billowing curtains, you've got mirrors, you've got dry ice, you've got slow motion doves and wind machines, big hair that's going to go up if a match is put anywhere near it. But then there's a whole ton load of other weird shit thrown in on top of all that. You've got, I'd forgotten some of the stuff that was in there. There's like freeform jazz ballet with the cast of Lord of the Flies at one point. There's the flying choir boy with low wattage bulb eyes.
Which apparently is an urban myth. That was Gianfranco Zola, that kid. I read on the internet.
It looks like him. It
does look like it. Apparently, he's actually admitted that it wasn't. He's had to come forward and say, definitely wasn't me.
I mean, it's fantastic. Again, God, we thought the communication video didn't make a lot of sense. I mean, this makes no sense whatsoever, does it? Basically, she's at the school wandering around at night, I guess, in like a long white dress that keeps blowing all over the place in the wind machines. And then it turns out at the end, she seems to be a new teacher at the school, maybe. And then a young lad who's clearly far too old to be a pupil there gets introduced to her. And he's got big bright eyes, and he sings to her "Turn Around, Bright Eyes." Is he singing to himself? Is he singing to? He's the one with bright eyes. Why is he saying that to her? That's what I want to know. There's so many questions. So many questions.
It was directed by Russell Mackay. I looked it up, so he did all of the Duran Duran videos. So he's responsible for the Rio and the boat and the Wild Boys video is one of his. He did "I'm Still Standing," Elton John's, and then he obviously ended up directing Highlander. And actually, if you look at her wandering through the corridors with all, as you say, billowing curtains and hair and doves, and it's reminiscent of Highlander. It's kind of slightly low angle, wide shots, slightly fisheye lens, and Bonnie's backlit as if her life depends on it. And she's got some really wide shoulder pads. They are ridiculously wide,
It's a wonder she got down the corridor.
There's a bit where there's some American footballers kind of do an American football dance up some stairs, and I think arguably their shoulder pads are smaller than hers.
You've got a power dress for a power ballad.
But yeah, it's I don't like it. I never liked it at the time, and I still don't like it. But the video is staggeringly brilliant.
It is.
Just for all the cliches under the sun.
I should say, because I made allusion to it at the very beginning of the podcast about OMD standing in a giant wet room, and I said I thought I knew exactly where that photo had been taken. And there's a bit where there's some lads who they're not in it. I don't know quite where they are, but suddenly, like you see, I think slow motion water cascading across them, and the background is exactly like where OMD are standing. So my theory is, I guess OMD got in there first, because if you look at the cover, there's not a drop of water on there. I think they got in while it was dry. Bonnie Tyler's knocking at the door going, "Andy, Paul, have you finished yet? Come on, we've got to shoot the video." They do their thing with Sheila Rock. They get out. And then Bonnie and the lads straight in there doing total eclipse with Gianfranco Zola. I think that's how it went down.
That's a great pitch.
Oh, it's hilarious. There's a great, if anyone's not seen it as well, if you like literal videos where people kind of re-raise the original soundtrack and sing about what's happening on the screen. There's a really good one to Total Eclipse of the Heart that kind of describes the action as someone doing a very passable Bonnie Tyler impression. So, If you do like the video, I would recommend looking up the literal version of Total Eclipse of the Heart on YouTube as well.
And then we get to a piece called "And You Can Take Them With You." Gavin, would you like to tell us what all this is about?
Certainly, I can set the scene for you. So they're looking at some of the latest technology on the market, various Walkmans, stereos, mini TV players, record players, that kind of thing. And we'll come to the prices in a moment, which are horrendously high. But they've got 6 different pop stars, and what strikes you looking at it is it's. Again, we've talked a few times in this issue about the range of pop stars. And so you've got some A-listers. You've got Bananarama there with their cassette recorders. And you've got Annie Lennox with a high-end Sony colour video camera. And then you've got Wham with Shirley and Dee road testing their bits of equipment. And then we go down the ladder of pop. Several... I think it's fair to say we've come off the carousel at this point and we're circling Le Dumpeur. Yeah. Because we've got Mick Mullins of Modern Romance... with his nice white shoes and very, very blue trousers that aren't jeans. We've got Gary Tibbs from the recently disbanded Adam and the Ants, and previously from Roxy Music, he had a bit of a spell in. Mm-hmm. Now American Tibbs, who didn't really set the pop world aflame. And underneath Bananarama, we've got the household name that is lead jury of Eraserhead, who looks a bit like Sid Vicious fishing outside an igloo for a frozen fish. He's got a very nice portable record player that he's got there, though. I must say, I'm quite envious of that. That costs, right, let's have a look at some of the prices, because these are great.
Okay, so this is a Sharp V2 vertical record player. I remember seeing this on the wall in my local Currys just before Christmas 1982, and I wanted it so badly. It was attached to the wall in the shop, and I couldn't believe that you could have a record player. Like I said, it was attached to the wall, so it was vertical, and the records were playing in it, and you didn't have to turn it over. And I just wanted it so badly. I still look at them on eBay now.
Bearing in mind that I was looking at one of those websites where it tells you the price of something then to now, and it's roughly 3 times these prices are what you'd expect to pay now. So the price then for this record deck was 259 quid. So, I mean, that's over 750 quid in today's money.
I can give
2021.
You exactly how much it is. I've done the...
Okay, go on.
I've used the Bank of England inflation calculator, £893.79.
Wow. Even more than I thought. Oh, my God.
Wow.
Wow. Well, and that pales into insignificance if you look at the video camera that Annie Lennox is filming some... She's just filming some white space, I think.
Yeah. For the next Eurythmics video.
It was £1,248, which I guess if we multiply it by 3.5, it's going to be about $5,000, isn't it, getting on for?
£4,306.74.
Wow.
I mean, you could buy a car for that, couldn't you?
You could.
A decent second-hand car, So it's fair to say they're not pocket money prices, any of these things. The cheapest thing, I think, is the Panasonic Way stereo cassette, kind of like a slightly cheaper version of a Walkman that Karen from Bananarama has got, and that's £66.50, which it'd still be roughly 200 quid in today's money.
You're not far off, £227.76.
Wow.
I mean, at this time I was getting I think I was getting like £1 a week or something. I mean, I'd have to save up for years for any of this stuff,
Yeah.
It's crazy.
No, I mean, looking at this, all these items is like, yeah, I'll have one each of them. But certainly the record player would have been top of my list, closely followed by the JVC CX5000 GB TV radio cassette thingamabob
that George has got. Yeah,
but he doesn't care much for TV, so it's wasted on him. We've got a tiny TV screen in it, inbuilt radio, and a cassette recorder, because you'd have been able to tape the soundtrack off the TV as well, and that would have just been perfect for me. I was obsessed with recording everything. So, yeah, those would have been the 2 things top of my list there.
I like the fact that Wham are wearing the George and Andrew are wearing what they wore on Top of the Pops. That's the Young Guns outfit.
Yeah. Yes, you're right.
I thought that was... Yeah, maybe that's because they were up and coming pop stars. Maybe it's the only clothes they had.
Yeah.
But I thought that was quite, and also the photos are taken by Eric Watson, who did all the Pet Shop Boys stuff. Who took all the really well-known Pet Shop Boys covers. I just thought that was worthy of note.
What would you have fancied there, Rich?
I would have gone for the record player as well, definitely, or just one of those Walkmans where the Walkman pops out. So you get 2 for the price of 1, which is one of the Bananaramas is carrying. Siobhan. Well, see, Siobhan's got it, so it must be good. So, yeah.
Okay, moving on to the letters. So sometimes we gloss over them on slightly later issues because there's so many in-jokes and so much black type that is almost indecipherable to us all these years later. But this is kind of you definitely get more of a flavour of the kind of things that are raising the hackles of the pop kids in early '83. So there's lots of stuff about Kajagoogoo and whether they're just absolute tosh or, a good band. Someone from Glossop writes in, actually, a Strawberry Switchblade in Glossop. Did you see that?
Yeah, I noticed that, yeah.
They're writing in defence of Kajagoogoo because on a recent round table, the infamous Mark Ellen has slagged off Kajagoogoo on the grounds that they were fashionable, and a Strawberry Switchblade from Glossop has taken issue with that. The thing that I really noticed, well, there's a couple of things, really. One of them was that looking through these letter pages over the issues as we have done, there is often a letter from a heavy metal fan complaining about the lack of heavy metal. And again, we've got another one here. It says, now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought Smash Hits was supposed to be a magazine for all tastes of music. Well, it certainly doesn't look like it to me, judging by your covers. This is how your covers have gone since December 1981. And they list them all, like, Culture Club, Bauhaus. The list goes on and on. There's far too many to mention. Now, don't get me wrong, I like all the above mentioned groups a lot, and your magazine, but could you not at least once a year feature on your cover groups like Whitesnake, Deep Purple, Gillan, or Meatloaf? Meatloaf. He's the French version of Meatloaf. Or Meatloaf, to mention but a few decent groups, and that's from Gillan's Hairbrush. Don't be cheeky, he has got one. So, yeah, that's a continuing theme. I just think anyone that's really, really into metal, and, they do often feature metal bands in Smash Hits, but they're not really going to put them on the cover, are they? And I think if you're really that into metal, that you're that desperate, just buy Kerrang, mate. I think Kerrang was going then, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm pretty sure it was, yeah. So that was good. And there was also... this is quite interesting, I thought, just because of the time, from 1983. There's a little letter that actually gets its own little picture, a little Kipper Williams picture. Someone writes in, Morezo from Lisbon, writes to say, I'm writing to complain about all these Beatles reissues. OK, they were a great group in their time, as your interesting facts article showed, but repackaging all their singles and bringing them out 20 years later is just a sophisticated rip-off by their record company. Surely they should be leaving the charts free for new bands instead of filling it up with ancient songs that have already been big hits. If AMI spent as much money promoting new talent as they do bringing Beatles records back from the grave, we'd all be a lot happier. Well, welcome to 2021, because 40 years on, we ain't stopped now. Now we're kind of going through all the outtakes and reissuing them, and
yeah, you ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, that was 13 years after the Beatles had finally ended it, and we're still getting Beatles reissues every other week, pretty much. Anything that stood out for either of you two on the letters page?
Weirdly, I picked up on that record thing. It was the last one from Louise B and Kerry Reid talking about the names for bands, and I mean they're pretty lame in terms of the joke that they're trying to do. And I just thought at the end of it, I thought it took two of you to come up with that that list. So she wants to call the Japan the Japs, which is a little bit dubious. Then there's the Softies for Soft Cell, the Alphabet Boys for ABC, which kind of does the reverse, or the Bucksters for Bucksfizz, and Hot Chocks for Hot Chocolate, the Bowsters for Bauhaus.
That's very poor, isn't it? Very poor.
Very poor. It's just two girls in a bedroom dreaming this up and writing it in, and it just made me laugh that was the best they could do.
And a letter opposite that, and it says, it seems to me that amid all the sensation of the Jam, Japan and Squeeze splitting up, everyone has overlooked the rearrangement of one of the world's supergroups. This winter, Brian Ferry and his fellow Roxys emigrated to Australia. There, they decided to change the group's name and image, but not their sound. The result of all this is a single called Hey Little Girl under the name of Icehouse, which is going up the charts in leaps and bounds. I would like to take this opportunity to wish Mr. Ferry the best of luck with this new venture. and that's from Brian's Old Tuxedo, North Devon. Now, at a tender age of 9 and a bit, Roxy Music were my favourite band at that point. In fact, the Christmas before, my mum had knitted me a Roxy Music jumper. She'd asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I said a Roxy Music jumper. So she worked out how to knit the letters to spell Roxy Music on a blue and black jumper, which I've still got around somewhere. And I remember hearing this on the radio and thinking that it was a new Roxy Music single, because it's absolutely got that kind of late period Roxy Music sound. It could have come straight off, like a Dance Away or Same Old Scene, Avalon sort of thing. It is absolutely that sound, and I love this song, so and that is probably why.
There's another one more letter that caught my eye, just because of the start to it. It's that kind of cliched start that you always get in letters pages of music papers. Just who the hell does Dave Rimmer think he is, slagging off jazz funk? Which is a great opening to a letter. But then I'm a bit confused, because the Sonia Spence from Warrington, who's written this, says maybe you should listen to records like Planet Rock, E.T., Scorpio, or any other good rapping song by Grandmaster Flash, and then he will see how damn good jazz funk is. I mean, I'm not an expert on the genre, but I don't really think those are jazz funk, are they?
I wrote down exactly the same.
Are they kind of early electro hip-hop kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Sonia's a bit confused by her genres there.
And it was I couldn't understand the abbreviation, the W-ton, so I just thought the Wu-Tang, I just read it as Wu-Tang Clan.
Sonia Spence from the Wu-Tang Clan, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's right. You got the Ghostface Killer, the RZA, Sonia Spence, Dirty Bastard. I think that's the main one, right?
Classic lineup.
Yeah. Enter the 36 chambers of jazz funk.
So we go swiftly from the letters page onto RSVP.
Hey.
Anybody there that you feel like writing a letter to?
This made me laugh. Oh, there's a couple.
Yeah, there are. Go on, Richard.
Only one I wanted to pick up, because working in the film business, when I see a postcode, I want to Google Street Maps and find out where it is. So I kind of looked a couple of these addresses up as well, and the one that made me, the lady that likes, Tony Taylor of 8 Minster Way, hates Boy George and heavy metal. And then I Googled the address, and it's basically in a cloister. And I just thought, yeah, there's a good reason why you probably don't like Boy George then, really. It's sort of a cloistered, gated kind of sort of religious community. And then there was another, I mean, that's making gross assumptions, of course. And then there was the 17-year-old Scots trendy living down south called Butch Wolven.
Oh, yes, I like that one.
Was after 12 to 16 boys or girls that had a Hillman imp. And I looked up 8 Woodview Rise in Strood. And as far as I can make out, it probably hasn't changed since 1983. It just looks exactly what an early 1980s housing estate would look like. And I did wonder whether her trusty Hillman imp was still there. And the other one I liked was, the only other one was Kate, 17, would swap words and thoughts with Bauhaus, Bowie, White and Torch, whatever that meant. Crozier House, where she lived, has been bulldozed. It doesn't exist anymore. So, yeah, they were the 3 that I pulled out. Slightly stalkery.
I guess, Si, you'd have written to Kate, 17, I imagine.
Yeah, Bowie, Japan, Bauhaus, right up my street. Even then, they were up my street. But yeah, that dislike of heavy metal coming right through on the
top. Yeah, big time.
My name is Catherine, and my fave groups include Duran Duran, Kajagoogoo, Toya and U2. I dislike heavy metal. And she's in South Wales. My name is Carl, and I would like to hear from girls and boys aged 16 plus. I enjoy all kinds of music except punk and heavy metal. My interests include animals, photography and writing.
The one I would have written to, there's one towards the end, the penultimate advert is, I'm a 15-year-old strange German female. That sounds intriguing, doesn't it? And I'd like to hear from anyone, anywhere, who'll second my emotion. I like Black Clothes, Japan, Simple Minds, Mark and the Mambas, Echo and the Bunnymen and others. Please write to Ulrike Luz in West Germany. She sounds quite mysterious and
exotic,
all exotic and European and that, So yeah, I liked her. I thought these three lads here were very optimistic in what they wanted. Three loony guys wish to write to three equally mad girls with a good sense of humour. We enjoy Fun Boy 3, The Pale Fountain, Shalimar and Yazoo. Pics if possible. Bananarama lookalikes welcome. I don't think that's going to happen, mate. I don't think that's going to happen. But good luck with it.
Yeah, I admire his ambition.
Yeah. We could get three girls like Bananarama, and we could be like Fun Boy 3 and Bananarama. I think that's what in their head they were looking for. But
yeah, that's what they're aspiring to there. Rich, did you ever write to anyone out the pages of Smash Hits?
No, I never wrote to anybody in Smash Hits in the letters page and wanted. I did have a pen pal, ironically, from Germany. I slightly digress, but I went on a holiday with my parents in the mid-70s and threw a bottle over the side of a boat on a ferry. And she was on holiday in Denmark, a German pen pal, and she picked it up on a beach. And my family are still friends with her. Yeah, we're still friends. Wow. We're still friends. It's sort of weird thing. So yeah. So I had a German pen pal.
Message in a bottle, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, all of that.
That's impressive.
Yeah. But no, never wrote Smash It. Just prefer to throw litter over the side of the boat.
Do you remember what you said on the bit of paper? Did you say, "I'm rich, I hate heavy metal, please write to me"?
Likes Howard Jones, OMD.
Likes Howard Jones, yeah. Something like that. It would have been name and address and age, probably, and a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
Please write.
Carefree days.
So we get a couple of more lyrics to close this issue of Smash Hits. Icehouse, Hey Little Girl, there they are again, and UB40, I've got mine, and on the back page, free, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 badges there. I'm assuming that you didn't get all 7 badges with the following issue of Smash Hits, maybe just a selection of them, but there's Culture Club, Madness, Spandau Ballet, Simple Minds, Wham, Tears for Fears, and U2. I mean, you were both buying Smash Hits at that time. Would you have worn any of these badges proudly?
Well, the one that I got, I remember because I had it reserved at the newsagent, and I got the Madness one, which was okay. I did like Madness, and I would rather have that than Culture Club or Spandau Ballet for sure. I probably would have preferred, certainly a year or two later, I would have been very happy if I'd have got the Simple Minds or YouTube badge and then worn those. But I don't really remember wearing my Madness badge.
No, I had the Spandau Ballet badge, so there we go. And I would wear it ironically, of course. But yeah, that's the one I had. Oddly, looking at it, there's no sort of reference to the Spandau Ballet logo, but the Simple Mind ones and the Wham and the U2 and the Culture Club have kind of got a passing resemblance to the branding of the bands, haven't they? So they probably just run out of ideas by the time they got to Spandau and Tears for Fears. Also on the back, it's meant rather brilliantly, and I've only noticed it now, is that March the 3rd is my birthday. So the next issue on March the 3rd, and I would have been 16 on that birthday. So yeah.
Oh wow.
There we go.
Happy 16th.
Thank you very much.
You got a Spandau Ballet badge for your birthday. That's lovely.
Spandau Ballet badge, and if you could give me a rechargeable battery thing, one of those battery chargers for my Walkman, that would have been good. That's what I got for my 16th. So yeah,
there we are.
I remember that, but bizarrely. Good times.
So thinking back to the days that you were buying Smash Hits, how long did you stay with the magazine for? So this was your first one. How long did you keep on buying and reading it for? I
bought it probably for another 3 years, so sort of to 18. But I was also buying The Face. By that point, I really got into The Face magazine, and that was then my Bible when I sixth form college, art college, film school, started work and all the rest of it. So yeah, I did sort of 3 years of Smash Hits, and then there was a bit of a crossover, a sort of a mix then with The Face magazine, and yeah, away I went. But I kind of occasionally did NME, and occasionally did Melody Maker. I did a bit of number one magazine on occasion, and there was another magazine called Chart Music, I think, something like that. But it was always smash hits. It was sort of solid smash hits for three and a bit years.
And now that we've finished having a look through this edition of The Hits, I'd be interested to know your thoughts, looking back on it now, almost like 40 years on.
I think, well, for me, it feels like a little bit of a calm before a storm, because we've talked about True and, Frankie Relax is still a year away, and you've had that sort of first wave of Culture Club becoming big, Duran Duran becoming big, Spandau those bands are all there and doing their thing and very successful. So it just feels like a kind of embedded in, really, I guess, looking back on it. But as I said, it's sort of really surprising the amount of songs that I didn't know in those singles and albums reviews. Just reading it again the last couple of days, and I pored over this magazine as much as I did when I probably first bought it, and just I thought I knew everything about that period of pop music, and clearly I don't. There was a whole load of stuff out there that I just completely missed.
And Gav, what about you?
Yeah, I think for me, what Richard says about the calm before the storm, before everything became more calculated, when things were a bit more amateurish and felt like things happened maybe a little bit more spontaneously, and there was more of that kind of slightly carefree spirit, I think. And then, once True gets big, and you were talking about the Americanization of pop and MTV and all that, and then it felt like maybe some of that creativity and that just exuberance and, that kind of crazy creative time kind of gets lost a little bit, and it's more about what will sell and what's the market and, thinking about demographics and how's this going to sound on American radio on FM rather than medium wave or, that kind of stuff. So I quite like this period because it's it's kind of post-punk and it's kind of new wave. But still, I think creatively it's a very fertile period. And then I think not long after this, things started to get a little bit bland and a bit safe and a bit corporate. So, yeah, for me, this is a great kind of era,
Yeah, no, I think you're right. There's like almost like an innocence and naivety to it that I think is probably still carried over from punk and new wave, and there's that attitude that kind of informs a lot of what the bands are doing, and that that they're all just figuring this out for themselves. And even the big record companies haven't quite figured out how to play the game yet. And like say, a couple of years down the line, they are working out how to play the game, and that's when it kind of loses that edge a little bit. So there's still a great deal of excitement in pop music at this time from the bands that we were seeing come through. But for me personally, I've just been taken right back to being that 9-year-old moving house, starting a new school, and everything just feeling new.
Shiny.
Yeah, and just listening to the songs on the playlist and just looking at these photos and, that cover with OMD. There's just, a real kind of freshness and newness to it that maybe it is because I associate it with that time, or maybe that exists, for other people as well. I don't know, but that's everything that I'm bringing to it. And listening back to these songs, I was just immediately back there, 9 years old and starting a new school and stuff.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's nice. It is. It's that kind of, particularly because of the climate we're in at the moment with lockdown and all the attendant strangeness, going back to this kind of little period of history, it's like going back to your little cosy, warm, safe space in your head, and it's very comforting, isn't it?
Yeah. It's been sat on our coffee table for a couple of weeks. Oh, look at me, posh down south with the coffee table.
What's a coffee table? We don't have them up here.
I am living the dream. But no, it's literally been sat there with 3 or 4 of the other issues, and I've been sort of just tucking into it, and it's been a labour of love. This another UB40 reference. It's been a real labour of love to go through this and sort of reminisce in a kind of quite a positive way, actually.
It's given you some food for thought.
Ah, very good.
Richard, thank you so much for joining us and for going through this issue of Smash. It's really, really appreciated.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it.
Glad to hear that. And thanks to you out there for listening. Don't forget to check out our website, giddypoppod.home.blog, where you'll also find the links to the edition. Where you'll also find the links. You
found a what?
Link.
Found a what?
You found a link. Where you'll also find the links to the edition. No, I can't do that. Where you'll also find the. Where you'll also find, you will, goddammit, where you'll also find the links to the edition of Smash Hits that we've been looking at, along with those Spotify and YouTube playlists for that extra layer of experience. And you can, of course, check out the playlists and scans. This is a disaster. And you can, of course, check out the playlists and scans for our previous episodes while you're there. Don't forget, if you want to support us by buying us a coffee, we'd be forever in your debt.
The ramblings of a madman.
Oh dear. What we're doing? Oh yes. If you want to support us by buying us a coffee, we'd be forever in your debt. Coffee.com, that's ko-fi.com/giddypoppod, and that's where you can go to do that. Buy us a little coffee and come and say hello to us at GiddyPopPod on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and we'll say hello back. We really will. So thanks again once for listening.
One time, two time.
So thanks once again.
It's been a few months, hasn't it?
It has been a while. So thanks once again. No, I can't say it. So thanks once again for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Giddy Carousel of Pop. Bye.
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 Hey, well done, Si. You got there.
Oh, flipping heck.